what do we mean by a learning culture here? Culture also brings us into a kind of a definite and habitual behavior. Like for example, if you meet an Indian, most probably we will say a namaste. But if you meet a Japanese, we may bow because the culture brings a particular way of behavior. Like for example, how we are habituated, not just because of culture, because of our own conditioning also. If I have to now ask you to show number 4, using your fingers, how you will show? Like this? Now why don't we show 4 this way? Or why not this way? Why not maybe in a different way? But our instant reflex is to show like this. This is how we are conditioned in some way to give a reactive demonstration of our behavior, and culture has a lot of influence on such kind of habitual behavior. I am not talking about 4, but for any reaction or any situation, a person may give a response in a habitual way. Now what is happening is, in an organization, particularly when we started learning organization, the context are changing, the situation in the market is changing, but the behavior seems to be the same because the culture is holding the behavior. So when the culture is the same but the situations are changing, market situations are changing, what happens is the mismatch in reality starts expanding more and more and more. Expectation between management and the employees, sometimes there is difference. Expectation between customer and business orientation seems to be different. So this gap starts widening, and how do we now ensure that gap is minimized? I am not saying it can be reduced fully, but how do we minimize? That is where this learning culture, if it is brought in as a part of the organization culture, then through the dialogical process, we can find where there is a mismatch and where it needs to be aligned. For that, we need to build a space, otherwise it is not going to happen. Just talking about a culture and organization will not bring a culture. We need to bring a space for that and a system for it. Like for example, if I have to use a theatre metaphor, a drama stage, to talk to you about what do we mean by a learning culture. Imagine there is a drama stage and you have a backdrop of a beach or a scenic beach where there is waves, there is trees. What do you think will be the role play in that drama stage? There is a background of beach. What could be the scene play there? Playing, yeah? Yes. Family relaxing or some romantic situation. Okay, when I said romantic, there seems to be some little smile. Okay, so let's say now that we change the backdrop of the stage to a hospital. Then what happens? Possible. For some people it may be care. And if you change the backdrop to now a police station, it will be very fear. Yeah. So it depends on what backdrop is available, people's reactions are available. So in an organization context, when people are working together, there is a backdrop, an invisible backdrop, which is mentioning about performance, it's mentioning about strategy, profitability. There are so many organizational requirements are in the backdrop and people are working. So then what do we do there is to introduce a backdrop, the same work setting, but we introduce a backdrop of learning frame to the same work context. It's not about learning something, but learning about our own work. Now when we start learning about our own work, multiple perspectives are possible, and then the habitual response changes. What do I mean by multiple perspectives? Like for example, I am going to lead you through one more exercise of maybe keep your hands like this and try to move and touch the 2 fingers. Yeah, it's very easy, right? All of you can do that very easily. But you now keep your one eye closed and do the same. You would see it won't so easily match. So if you have a single perspective alone, to match realities will be very, very difficult. You need to have multiple perspectives to match reality together. So when there is a learning backdrop and people work together through dialogic, they get multiple perspectives, which updates the habit of people according to the context and the new situations which is arising there. So over a period of time, what happens in the context is, people get oriented to 70% focusing towards their role in their own function and 30% towards the overall development of the organization. When many people give 30% to the overall development of the organization benefits manifold than everyone giving 100% in their own role. But we need to build a space for it. That is what learning culture helps to build a space. Now what do we mean by this 30-70? When people are able to think, okay, my every reaction is going to contribute to the overall function of the organization, they have started thinking in a systemic way. Because they are not just seeing that as a role, but every reaction is going to contribute something for the organization. And if I have to give you one more exercise for that, this is one example of Swami Siddhananda which I like the most is, take your index finger again, I am leading you through a lot of index finger activities, and try to touch your nose, then try to touch your chin, then your cheek, maybe your head, and then whenever I touch my head, I remember I don't have hair. So you touch your ears, and now touch your body. All the time you were touching your body. But we don't carry that perspective. So every organization, when we are working, we are only seeing that we are doing this role, but this role is touching the entire organization. So how do we expand that frame of reference? That happens through the dialogic process, through the learning culture. Then it doesn't mean we introduce only the learning backdrop. Again, the work backdrop comes back because they are supposed to work. Then again we bring the learning backdrop, work backdrop, learning backdrop. Over a period of time, what happens in an employee mind is, they start building two perspectives in their mind. One, a work perspective, because I am supposed to work, and another is a learning perspective to their own work, which gets built into their mind. So as they work, they also start learning about how they work. When we can do this in a systematic way, in a step-by-step way, we are able to see a huge culture change in an organization. So it's like making a small change in the organization which makes an enormous impact, and it doesn't mean that I'm promising through this everything will be different from now, but it's an invitation for you to explore new possibilities in learning and development.